WWE has finally had direction with the rise of Batista and John Cena, along with an amazing set of characters behind them. There was finally enough momentum to officially move on from Stone Cold and The Rock. WWE had made a lot of decisions that worked in their favor at the time and experienced slight ratings increases. The move to USA Network allowed for more exposure again when compared to Spike TV, and saw Raw had its highest ratings in about 5 years. WrestleMania 22 was simply riding the momentum and establishing that John Cena is their #1 guy, that he's going to be on top for a very long time. There's a lot of sentimental value from WrestleMania 22 for me. It was the first DVD I ever had, the first wrestling DVD I got my hands on, and I watched it endlessly. I remember that summer of 2006 was just rewatching WrestleMania 22, Disc 1, Disc 2 with the rest of the event. There was even a Saturday night's main event episode in there. So revisiting this WrestleMania is going to bring back a lot of memories. My favorite WrestleMania of all time. I remember watching it for the first time, and the one thing that stuck to me was that hardcore match. And I haven't watched the event in full in about 7 years, but it's time we do. Okay, WrestleMania 22 is held in the All-State Arena in Chicago, Illinois on April 2nd, 2006. 17,155 were in attendance and the buy rate was 975,000. It's crazy how WWE never tried their luck with the stadium earlier. I do think it's a bit crazy how this was the last WrestleMania to be held in an arena. We don't talk about 36, but to me, WrestleMania's aura is held by a stadium. They still did well for themselves here, but it would be felt more if WWE just decided to go back to an arena for a future WrestleMania. Like, you'd feel a bit of a downgrade, to be honest. And now this card was originally shaped up to be different by the looks of it. For one, Kurt Angle was on the Raw brand before the Royal Rumble, so that in itself changes a lot. One of the matches he wanted was against The Undertaker, but it obviously couldn't go down. They did it at No Way Out instead. Shawn Michaels was heavily rumored to face Eddie Guerrero, and this is a match that had been pitched but wasn't guaranteed to be the match at WrestleMania 22. It was considered, and if you ask me, just based on a guess, I do think they would have done the match anyways, because HBK ended up feuding with Vince about a month after Eddie's passing. Batista and Orton, of course, was supposed to be on the show for the World Heavyweight Championship, and another big match was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Hulk Hogan. This one wasn't really there, but Hogan was trying desperately to make the match happen. Austin wasn't interested though. And lastly, another match which does have a claim of actually happening again, Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, the finale. Now the reason why I added this match here is because Kurt Angle himself had no problem with this being his match at WrestleMania. It would have served as the grand finale to the feud that deserved a finale. It did have one, but it was on Raw. It wasn't spectacular, and it was used as a way to play into the whole McMahon versus HBK storyline. The theme songs to the event are Big Time by Peter Gabriel, I Dare You by Shinedown, and Save Me Sorrow by Bullets and Octane. So with that said, let's get into it. Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child opened the show with America the Beautiful, and there was an amazing intro for the show highlighting all the classic WrestleMania moments. This has to be the best WrestleMania intro next to 23 and 27. The first match on the show saw the World Tag Team Championships. Big Show and Kane defended the titles against Carlito and Chris Masters. These two teams were thrown together. I like Kane and Big Show's partnership, but feel like they could have caused more chaos and carnage. They're already shown to be dangerous and tough, but I wish they were the final bosses of the tag team division. Carlito and Masters were very similar, young wrestlers with plenty of ego, and apparently this was the first WrestleMania since 15 to have a normal tag title match, which is a bit crazy to me. The heels struggled to figure out the onslaught from the champions. Not only did they have the advantage, but they were too strong and just big. Carlito was trying out wrestling, which clearly wasn't going to work with this mammoth. Kane did a better job at flying than he would have, which is ironic because they're the smaller guys. All they needed was a moment of partnership. They exposed the turnbuckle and did what they do best. Fight dirty. Big Show finally tagged down. Kane comes in. He finds himself in the master lock, but not for long before the fans boo. Backstabber. Big Show at the attempt at a chokeslam, and at this point, while the champions had the advantage, it was starting to edge towards the challengers. Big mistake from Masters, and Kane hits the chokeslam 1, 2, 3. Average match. Carlito and Masters logically don't take much of an advantage because of their team chemistry, and coupled with the challenge in front of them, the match goes the way you think it should. There's not much to say about it. It was effective in giving the heels a reason to start having issues, but other than that, it's just a basic match that served its purpose in helping these guys get on the card. You're literally not going to hear much from me about this match because it didn't offer much. Carlito and Masters started arguing after the match. Shawn Michaels in the back didn't regret anything about what he said to Vince. He told everyone not to expect a 5-star classic from him because it's going to get ugly. He's getting the darkest version of HBK imaginable, to the point where Vince is going to be praying to God to save him. Why? Because he's going to endure his own personal hell. Great backstage promo. HBK was all intense, and it makes you more hyped for his match with Vince. The next match was Money in the Bank. Matt Hardy, Shelton Benjamin, Finlay, Rob Van Dam, Bobby Lashley, and Ric Flair. Now, what does Ric Flair know about ladders? Well, It's like asking me about golf. The Money in the Bank actually had a lot of credibility here because it was seen as a gateway to the main event, as opposed to being a Netflix free trial test run that doesn't work. They all have their moment, and then Shelton Benjamin's like, this is my match. And then Ric Flair climbed up the ladder thinking it was simple as changing a light bulb, although with Flair, it might be easier working a normal match than doing that in itself. Then Matt Hardy, an icon of ladder matches, shows him what's up, and the poor guy wasn't built for this. Back in the ring, RVD does one of his highlight moves onto the ladder. Rolling Thunder didn't work for RVD, and we got 3 guys taking down Lashley, who was strong. Flair was ready for round 2, and Finley's like, this old moron. He has momentum, probably from cracking a cold one in the back, and he's untouchable. It almost feels like 1984 again. He could do anything he wanted. Then Finley whacks him with the shillelagh, and he took a rough fall. It really looked bad, especially for Ric Flair. RVD brought that ECW element to the ladder match. Hardy almost broke his ass bones trying to hit one of those leg drops and never win him a ladder match again, and followed up with a side effect on Finley. RVD decided to top all of this with a very dangerous 5-star. It was more of a splash though. It wasn't exactly a 5-star frog splash. He then pushed Matt and Shelton off the ladder before retrieving the briefcase to become Mr. Money in the Bank. I think RVD falling off right when he got the briefcase only established how valuable that briefcase was because he wasn't worried about his safety, rather the opportunity that was in his hands. This match was great. I liked it way more than I used to. The spots were dangerous and incredible, and I actually didn't appreciate this one as much as I should have because it was that good. RVD winning was a perfect choice. He was the one man that deserved that breakthrough more than anyone. They had a great storyline potential here with him as Mr. Money in the Bank, as we ended up seeing. I used to underestimate this one a bit because it didn't feel like 21 and 23's was a bit better. But no, this one holds its own. It ain't WrestleMania 21, but it certainly isn't some pushover ladder match that should be overlooked. I had fun watching this one, and it's much better than I remember it being, which is nice to see. Randy Orton disrespected Mean Gene Okerlund and said that it was his destiny to win the title. He called Angle a paper champion and Rey a charity case. Batista interrupted him and said by WrestleMania 23, he'll be World Heavyweight Champion again. That was correct. Now apparently this was the original match for WrestleMania 22, and it makes a lot of sense since Batista was a World Champion and you can't imagine him going against Rey. This is the most obvious match that the SmackDown brand could do and the biggest match they could do without Kurt Angle on the brand. Because when Angle came around and Batista got injured, everything changed. The next match is the United States Championship. Chris Benoit defended the gold against John Bradshaw Layfield. JBL finally challenges for a mid-card title. This was the most aggressive match up to this point because both men were capable of upping the intensity. JBL was overwhelmed by Benoit to the point he pushed Jillian in front of him. This match is a bit vicious. JBL wasn't doing that whole wrestling thing as he claimed in the build to the match, but he was doing pretty good for himself. Benoit always found himself failing to build momentum with JBL stopping every potential attempt. His intensity decreased while the champions increased. All of a sudden, he forgets how to hit moves, and Benoit got him in a very dangerous position. Then from out of nowhere, he flips him over with the hand on the rope for leverage to steal the victory and the title. Decent match is really not much because JBL is of course not a versatile in-ring performer, so I kind of lost a bit of interest in this one. He did have better matches with others, but I've always preferred his matches with a smaller wrestler as opposed to someone like Chris Benoit, someone like Rey, Eddie. I thought those were his best matches. Here, not so much. The next match is a hardcore match. Mick Foley faced Edge. The Rated R superstar had his first taste of the main event scene, and while his run was short, Edge passed with flying colors. But despite this, he still needed that moment to elevate him further and ensure his status as a main eventer. Enter Mick Foley, a man that craved that special WrestleMania moment, and coupled with Edge's desire to take him out, make a name for himself, it was a great combination. Joey Styles, the lead announcer for Raw, was demoted to this match, and this played a part into the whole shoot promo a month later. And this is one thing that I found very strange. Joey Styles was actually the lead announcer for Monday Night Raw, but they had Jim Ross Jr. replace him for this show despite firing him, telling him to go away for a bit. It's a bit funny, but that's not the point. Edge, while aggressive, was clearly out of his depth here with Mick Foley feeling very calm and experienced. Edge brought on the metal plates and these signs were bent and smashed into Foley's face. He thought he had the match with the spear, but Foley had it scouted with the barbed wire. He braced himself for impact, unlike Edge, and the match actually got hardcore now. Then Foley brought out the bat. Foley managed to throw himself and lead out in the process, and tell me why this man was taking spots like this. He wasn't even wrestling often at this point. This spot is almost as bad as that one, and I have to mention this for a moment. I was just watching this, I'm like, what the hell is this? The match was too hardcore for WrestleMania. Edge poured gasoline onto Mick Foley, and this was basically his opening. He felt motivated, he felt unlocked, and followed up with a pile driver. They traded pins at this point with Edge unleashing his extreme side, but he got a little ahead of himself though, leading to his own undoing. Foley brought out Sako with the barbed wire and scarred both Lita and Edge before carving open the Rated R superstar. Then to top it all off, he set the table on fire. Lita gave Edge's opening, leading to the spear through the flaming table, and as Joey Styles said, oh my god. 1, 2, 3. This is one of those matches from my childhood that stands out. Edge and Foley came into this determined to do the job, especially Mick Foley. This guy took spots that normal wrestlers wouldn't take, and these were all to benefit Edge. All he was gonna get was pain and suffering for a few weeks, with some of these injuries, I wouldn't say from this match necessarily, lasting a lifetime. Edge got his moment though, and it was a tremendous match. What makes it so good is that it was a very unconventional WrestleMania match. We see no DQ matches, but we don't see gasoline, barbed wire, and a flaming table in a match. But this one easily stands out. This was an excellent hardcore match, and what makes it good is that Edge came out of it a different person, and that alone tells you all you need to know. Booker T, meanwhile, was through a Strangers and Freaks mission with the guys telling him to embrace that side of him if he wanted to beat the Boogeyman. And the next match is a handicap match. Booker T and Sharmell faced the Boogeyman. This whole thing was solid from a character standpoint. Like, I gotta be honest with you guys. For as much as I don't like this match, they played their characters too well. And then Booker was too cowardly to face him and made his wife go out there, but that's what he thought initially because it was a dirty tactic though. Booker goes on the attack and he actually did a number on the Boogeyman. He even sold the kick very well. Booker dominated and hit the bookend, but it wasn't enough for the win, and this unlocked the Boogeyman. He brought out the Worms, kissed Sharmell, who made a run for it before dropping Booker to score the victory. I don't like this match much. Like, if I had to give a positive, they're characters, but it ain't same in this match. As for Booker T, well, things would get better for him only a couple of months later. The next match was for the WWE Women's Championship. Trish Stratus defending the gold against Mickie James. This was a story that had a lot of interest, especially for a woman storyline at the time, because back then there wasn't much interest in the Divas division, nor did WWE even care about pushing the Divas division, so he kind of had some nonsense stories that involved Playboy or whatever. This was more long term and something that established Mickie James as a star to watch out for. She befriended Trish, called her idol. Then, when she got a little too close with her, Trish felt very threatened and very worried for herself, leading to Mickie James turning on her and going crazy. Okay, Trish was aggressive early on, but Mickie got comfortable in the role. She worked on the knee all while the commentary was confused as to why Mickie James was getting cheered, and that's easy to say. You know, it's like, oh, why was she getting cheered? Well, it's because she was a much different character to what the fans were used to at the time. She was kind of similar to Victoria, but she had her own flair to it. Anything she did got a reaction out of the crowd. Great reversal from Trish to connect with a powerbomb, and the fans were invested in the match. And it was easy because WWE actually cared about these two. Mickie randomly grabbed Trish down there and got a strong strike for her efforts. There's a moment she made a sign, but it wasn't shown on the network. Mickie bounced back with a chick kick. 1, 2, 3. Solid match. And unfortunately, this was the best women's match up to this point at WrestleMania, which isn't saying much, but it was actually a solid match. But Mickie James, she played an excellent role here. He ended up getting yelled at Vince for doing that sign, which had to be edited out of future releases, but other than that, she had a great moment here, winning the Women's Championship in her first WrestleMania. Bro, how much 10 does he have? Did he hang out with SpongeBob and Patrick that one time? Vince decided to do something very strange for him, and that's pray. He promised to send HBK to hell, and this man showed zero lack of confidence. He even yelled hallelujah, and oddly enough, it is a moment that stands out for me from this event, I'm not gonna lie. The next match was a casket match. Mark Henry faced The Undertaker. 13-0 at WrestleMania. The Undertaker's streak was actually threatened at this time as WWE considered ending it here for Mark Henry. You gotta remember this. Henry had just returned and was famous for being injury prone, so it's crazy that he was shortlisted as one of the men to end it. Undertaker really wanted to face Kurt Angle here, but it was a bit complicated seeing as there needed to be a huge result. And Vince wasn't interested in the moment at giving Undertaker a title, but even less interested to see the streak end. With that said, Henry wasn't afraid. He went straight on the attack, pummeling the dead man, and we saw that agility and speed the Undertaker had. And I kind of forgot how fast 2000's Undertaker was, especially when he got leaner in 2005. Undertaker delivered some brutal shots, but they didn't phase Mark Henry at all. It was going to be a tough process for Undertaker to actually make a difference. He hit old school, but Mark Henry still didn't falter. He was doing everything he could to just knock him down, and they made their way to the casket, but it meant nothing. And back in the ring, Mark Henry hit the world's strongest slam and went for the pin. Wrong match. There's one of your favorite spots, and for the first time, The Undertaker actually dropped Henry with something, and that was the beginning of the end for the world's strongest man. Undertaker started to act up and hit a ridiculous dive over the top rope. I always forgot about this one. It took an extra leap, but this is WrestleMania after all, you know? This is where the big boys play, right? Tombstone pile driver, and there it is. The Undertaker is now 14-0, and surprisingly solid match. It was straight to the point. They knew Henry's limitations. They didn't have a lot of time anyways, but they made the most out of the time. You know, this match is much better than I remember it being. I don't hear anyone talk about it because it's not a special match or anything like that, but it's way better than I remember it being. So it's nice to see that. I didn't have a problem with Mark Henry here at all. Undertaker was, of course, the star of the match. That was one of the best leaps Undertaker ever did. Other than that, what makes it so solid? You don't have any problems. The match doesn't get dull. It flows well. This match isn't boring at all, which surprised me because I was like, there has to be some slow spots here where it's like, oh, maybe you're bored, maybe you're less interested, but there wasn't. It was actually a solid match. So there's that. The next match was no holds barred. Shawn Michaels faced Mr. McMahon. A match that came about because of Vince's ego. Being told to let go of the past, in some ways disrespected McMahon and everything he represented. His efforts of bringing back the old HBK were unsuccessful. He failed to change Michaels, and this led to a whole power trip. He threatened to fire him, tried to force him to retire, even drug tested him knowing his drink was spiked. Shawn Michaels promised for one night to bring back the worst version of himself because that's what Vince wanted. This version of McMahon was crazy, as is the rest of them, but this one was like a whole dream. This guy was testing God, jacked as hell, and deserved to be imprisoned. The multi-millionaire, possibly billionaire, threatened by a simple plea from his employee, or as they called them, independent contractor. It almost amazes me that this version of Vince might not be as crazy as his real life self. I don't know about the might part, but he is crazy regardless. Well, let's talk about the match. HBK had enough of the posing and went after him. This is when McMahon realized he was dealing with a wrestler and one of the best under the brightest lights. Vince was overwhelmed and whooped to the point where he had to bring in the Spear Squad. They were each 60 overall. In 2006, Michaels was 91 overall, so they had to try their best to use their numbers. But this allowed for the boss to finally get comfortable in the match. Too comfortable for his own good though. JR on commentary might have been shoot talking because this guy was going crazy. Like, this was one of the most passionate versions of Jim Ross you'll ever see. He was calling him the devil and all kinds of things, all while Michaels hit a brutal elbow from the top rope. And then from out of nowhere, Shane McMahon dropped HBK with the kendo stick, and it went from bad to worse with Michaels staring at his boss's ass. Only in WWE will you hear something like this. He didn't go in deep though because it was his son. Man should be stuffing his face in soap and Saratoga water, but he was handcuffed instead. And Michaels made good use of the kendo stick. Vince took a chair shot equivalent to 3 and his head was gushing blood. HBK was having too much fun and McMahon had blood dripping. That ladder shot just might have done a number on him. He was ready to jump off a ladder but decided it was better to get a bigger ladder, a ladder that left Shane McMahon speechless and stunned. He's stunned because he probably wanted to jump off something. That ladder was enormous. There's the DX sign and boom, crazy spot. This guy probably chilled thinking, what's taking so... Shawn Michaels didn't want to end it there because Vince deserved no mercy and compassion. He became the devil that McMahon had hoped and prayed to become for a moment and hit one of the roughest sweet chin musics. 1, 2, 3. What a match. This has almost no right to be as good as it was. It was Vince paying for years of his sins all in one match. HBK did his best to establish that he despised everything about Vince, from his existence to his actions, and it showed with every spot and every strike. He beat him up for real. That's what it looked like to me. I thought he was smacking him in there like it was a shoot. They didn't go overboard with Vince on offense, which is nice to see. It didn't have much in here, and it served as Vince's comeuppance. You know, this whole entire match served as Vince's comeuppance. Now, originally, Bret Hart was considered to feature in this match. I don't know how he'll be featured, but perhaps they could have him attack both of them. Just wanted to mention that. I have to give a lot of credit to Shawn Michaels because this was a different kind of match than what he usually wrestled at WrestleMania. He went from world-class wrestlers such as Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle to this, but even then, he put his name in contention for the best performer of the show. I don't have anything bad to say about this match. It was booked perfectly, and it fulfilled its full potential. Great match. The next match was for the World Heavyweight Championship. Kurt Angle defended the title against Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio, a match that never had a chance of happening 3 months earlier. Kurt Angle replaced Batista as the leader of the SmackDown brand. He took over the show and changed everything. Angle was in what many would consider it to be the best point of his entire career, and it was an incredible time for him, yet personal life was at its worst. Nobody would notice such a thing if Angle didn't talk about it. Rey Mysterio's position in this match comes with a lot of discussion over Eddie Guerrero, and unfortunately, most of his efforts during this build were tied to Latino heat. But at the same time, WWE probably wouldn't have considered him for this role if Eddie didn't pass away. Still though, Rey definitely deserved it. It was still a bit make-a-wish though, because he was thrown right to the top of the SmackDown brand, and Randy Orton was doing well for himself, but ended up ruining it this same week after getting busted with weed. Angle had the best reaction from these three, and I'm gonna get to that in a moment. Rey came out to a live performance of POD, and unfortunately, this took some time away from the match. Orton used the belt before the bell rang, and instantly this was fast-paced. Beautiful dropkick from Orton. Angle came back in there and hit a crazy German suplex, and I need you guys to understand that Angle was loved like crazy. It's like he was facing two villains. There was a great smoky atmosphere here, and along with the light change, it makes this match seem like the main event. I knew it was coming, but even then I was still amazed by this Hurricanrana. Mysterio spun Angle around before hitting the 619. Nope, he's cut. Rey tapped out, but Orton distracted the ref with the chair. Kurt Angle was untouchable during parts of this match, and then Orton was tapping, but Rey pulled the ref. Now all of a sudden, the fans started booing Rey Mysterio. Failed Angle slam and boom, RKO 1, 2, no. The RKO has to be one of the greatest finishers of all time, just spontaneous and dangerous, but that's like telling you 1 + 1 is 2. Angle rebounded with a belly-to-belly from the top. Rey messes up the 619 on the post, and even then, he almost had Angle down for the count. Brutal neck breaker from Orton almost gives him the victory, and as he's trying to wrap it up with the RKO, Angle comes in with the Angle slam. Rey manages to escape and evade, leading to the 619 on Orton. He follows up with the West Coast pop. 1, 2, 3, new champion. This match is bittersweet. I don't understand the mental games it plays with me because it's 9 minutes, yet it felt like a 14-minute match, and the most infuriating part in all of this is the fact that out of all the matches to deserve more time on this show, it's this. They were balling like crazy, every single one of them. I think this had the potential to be one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time. Angle was on fire and had the entire crowd by his side, and that crowd had plenty of respect for his craft, and ever since he became the wrestling machine, he kicked into the highest gear. They went out there and had the best possible match you can have in 9 minutes, and I still think it's unfortunate how it ended up. I finally understood why people say Angle should have retained. It feels like his title reign could have gotten more mileage out of it, and it's never more clear than on this night. But at the same time, this match also brought me back to the younger days. Ray was one of my favorites. You guys have to understand, I loved Ray, and when Chavo started feuding with him, he was a tier 2 devil to me. Tier 1 was of course Edge, so despite it being a bit forced, it's heartwarming to see Ray win here and actually get the job done. But plenty of respect for these 3 men, if only they had more time. And the next match was a Playboy pillow fight. Candice Michelle faced Tori Wilson. They flipped the bed in the first minute, and whatever you imagine this match, it was just that. Tori stripped Candice and this thing was all over the place, and I don't know how to talk about this one. Tori stole the match from out of nowhere. Okay. And the main event, John Cena defends the WWE Championship against Triple H. Okay, I just want to say, I loved this one 7 years ago, and I loved it especially 19 years ago as a kid. I don't really like the build of this match because some of the fans were already booing John Cena heading into it, yet they were calling his in-ring skill into question. I don't think John Cena's brawler style should be called into question in storyline. It's very unnecessary, especially in a time where fans are already booing him. With that said, Triple H had a great entrance as the King of Kings. This was actually the first time he used the theme song. The Barbarian, the Marvelous King of Kings, the game, Triple H. I do wonder if they swapped Triple H and Edge for their matches. I think it still would have been good because they both have history with that potential opponent. You know, Triple H with Foley and Edge with Cena. It's still cool regardless. John Cena came out a part of the Mafia. Bryan Danielson showed up on one of the gangster cars. I used to think these were real guns. And this was one of the rare instances that Cena wore the spinner belt on his waist during this era. It's so tiny, but it's something I noticed a lot. Now again, I always say this, but this version of Triple H just had a much cooler element to him when compared to the previous years. I think it's because he rolls alone now. He's got the King of Kings entrance. This was presented perfectly as the main event. You can feel the atmosphere in that 2000 style of main events where the referee checks them for potential weapons, tells them that this is the main event for the world title, all that. The crowd was already acting up earlier, but here, it was a full-on 2010s crowd. Cena was a street guy and Triple H was destined for success seeing as he came from a wealthy family. Cena's wrestling ability was tested early on. He was undoubtedly dominated by the challenger, and it was quite the humbling experience for John Cena. Cena didn't have much here with Triple H closing down any potential attack, and the fans were cheering like they were watching The Rock in 2001. Cena couldn't win the wrestling match, so he had to go back to what he knew best, the brawler style, and this instantly brought him some much needed momentum. The boos were ridiculous here. You tend to forget just how hated he was at one point because of how much Cena's reputation changed. WrestleMania was a strong peak in terms of crowd reactions for John Cena. It's one of the strongest in his entire career. Brutal backdrop on the steel from John Cena. He was wrestling more like the heel, which is so weird to see, especially with this version of Triple H. It wasn't like Triple H was wrestling clean, but you could notice that the champion who was so used to wrestling like an underdog was used differently, at least for the first parts of the match, because that slowly changed. He threw Cena into the steps, and back in the ring, the game started to find himself. He slowed down the pace, all while the crowd was booing Cena like crazy, while Triple H was actually starting to embrace this newfound love, even for a little. Brutal clothesline from the game from a near fall. He was very comfortable here, and there was strong work from Triple H on the neck. Cena was stuck in a rough position with no answer for the game. It took a very long time for John Cena to connect with the clothesline, and it was time for Act 3. They started to pick up the pace, leading to the champion making a comeback, and this picture was incredible. You could see just how much disdain that crowd had for John Cena in the year of 2006. It was amazing. Triple H evaded the 5-knuckle shuffle and hit the spine buster. 1, 2, no. Back up, Cena finally connects with the 5-knuckle shuffle, and it's time for the STFU. Triple H was caught and started scrambling like crazy. He did make it to the rope eventually. Cena's FU didn't work, and this led to the referee being knocked down and Triple H low-blowing both of them. He then mocked Cena and did the DX sign. Everyone was going crazy at this point, and he used the sledgehammer on the champ. 1, 2, no. Cena had something left in there because he managed to hit the FU. 1, 2, no. This match had such a great atmosphere. Cena went up top and missed. Chicago was convinced that the title was changing hands. Triple H's pedigree is evaded by Cena and he locks in the STFU. A lot of boosts from the crowd. Triple H almost passed out from the pressure but still fought through. Cena only improved his grip though and he was forced to tap out. And that crowd was stunned because it wasn't just Cena winning. He made Triple H tap out. It was almost a monumental upset because a lot of people were convinced that Triple H is going to bring out the shovel. It's not a burial because Cena's in the main event of WrestleMania and is a former world champion. But they were convinced convinced that Triple H was going to bring out the shovel and teach Cena something. But this is a very good match. So fun to see that Chicago crowd react to everything here. I don't think it was one of those amazing WrestleMania main events, but it's severely underrated, and it's a scenario where less is more. They didn't bust out a lot of moves because John Cena wasn't exactly a moves guy at this point, but they let the crowd guide them into a great match. They still did the work, of course, but the crowd really elevates it. The main events during this era didn't have this kind of crowd reaction. It was a very unique main event, and what makes it a unique match is that WWE didn't have these kind of crowds often for their shows. This Chicago crowd brought a different experience than what another crowd would have given on this night, and for me personally, it plays a strong role in solidifying this match as a great one. Cena's still not as good in ring as he would be later that year, but it was one of his better performances from this time period. I think in terms of potential, this match reached its maximum potential and fulfilled it. Cena did wrestle a bit heelish and as a competitor fighting away. Triple H was the man designated for the home role, and the moves were very impactful, and I felt like they really laid into each other at times, which is nice to see. It kind of helps the match. I still prefer their Night of Champions match because Cena had more experience up to that point, but this match has a charm that very few from this era of WWE have. I don't know if it's a hot take, but this was the right decision. The fact that Triple H was Cena's opponent here. The reason why is because he felt like the measuring stick of WWE. I don't think the Cena and Edge match would have felt as big as this one. Any other year though, that's a different story. But there was a real threat that Cena would lose here, and when you look at it from the 2006 perspective, that adds to the match. This was one of the most emphatic results of the 2000s. John Cena made the game submit in a match that many had predicted would go Triple H's way. Good stuff. Alright, that's WrestleMania 22. Once again, my favorite WrestleMania of all time. It's good to go back and see it, but when you watch the whole event in its entirety, from start to finish, you feel the nostalgia a lot. It really takes you back. I had fun watching it. Yeah, there's some dumb stuff on here. It highlighted the later years of the Ruthless Aggression era well, barring Batista unfortunately. The Chicago crowd, while it was a small crowd compared to the future WrestleManias, they were one of the best in WrestleMania history for sure. Match of the night, the obvious one is the hardcore match, obviously, but my favorite match, to be honest with you guys 100%, it was the main event. Action-wise, I like the triple threat match and the hardcore match better, but the main event really wins it for me because of the atmosphere and how everyone was just unlocked. Like, everyone cheered or booed Cena at this point. They were giving it their all to make that main event a special one. And it is a special one. Not for the action, but for the atmosphere. To the average person, from what I've seen, they like this WrestleMania, but they don't consider it an all-timer. It might be in their top 10 favorites or just edging it out, say like number 12 or 11 or something like that. But that's what I've seen. But for me, it's my favorite WrestleMania of all time, so yeah. Alright, what'd you guys think of WrestleMania 22? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the RK on the like button, or press STFU on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.